Chapter 4 test taken on December 17th, 2018. Let's go over the free response questions. Number 1, use your knowledge of reference points to write a quadratic function for the examples previously identified as unique parabolas in problem 1. If it is not possible to write a function, state why or why not. I took this question directly from your packet or either your student edition or skills practice. It gives you the vertex and it gives you a point. Well, automatically you should think, well, that means I have vertex form. What is the vertex form? Y equals a parentheses x minus h squared plus k. You got 2 points for just writing down the vertex form from your formula sheet. Well, what do? You just substitute in your values. Your h value is -3. Pay attention. The formula has the minus sign. Your k value is 4. And your x value is -4. And your y value is 1. Basically what you're doing here in the first step is you're going to be solving for your a value. When I substitute these values in, you will have 1 equals a -4 minus -3. Again, if you're struggling with those integers, use your calculator. This is a plus sign. Opposite of a negative is plus. So -4 plus 3 is -1. -1 squared is 1. Okay, right here, students are struggling. So this is 1 times a, right? You can also write it this, 1 times a plus 4. Costs you have to write the 1. No, it's just really a plus 4. You subtract 4 on both sides, you'll get a to be -3. If you got a equals -3, it's not the answer to the problem, but I gave you 3 points. Or you also got 3 points if you got x plus 3 squared plus 4. You take this a value now, and basically you put it back into the original equation, so all you have to do is the purple, the pink, and the yellow. So a, h, and k, you put it back in there. The x and y's you keep the same. So your answer is y equals -3, x plus 3 squared plus 4. Question number 2. Analyze the graph, then circle the functions which could model the graph. Describe the reasoning you used to either eliminate or chose each function. So you look at the graph, then you'll circle this. I don't even grade it if it's circled or not. If it models this, does it match? No. So what I like to do is I like to take the original problem. I know it's in standard form. There's no parentheses. ax squared plus bx plus c. My a value is 2. My b value is 0x, and my c value is a -8.9. The a value, if it's positive, tells you that the concavity or the graph opens up, like this. It's pointing up to the sky, smiley face, positive. Your c value is your y-intercept, 0, -8.9. So this here, I put a check mark because it actually does match the graph. This will eventually hit the y-axis. Does that make sense? It's a conceptual graph because there is no coordinates on here. So it's eventually going to hit a negative value on the y-axis. Okay. Why this does not match is because our equation graph opens up, but in the given one it opens down. So I wrote transformation does not match the given graph because the given equation opens up and the given graph opens down. The y-intercept matches. How did I award you points? If you wrote the word eliminate, then I gave you 2 points. I only gave you partial credit, 3 out of 4, if you're using words like positive and negative. Okay? What's positive and negative? That's positive and negative. No, you got to be specific. The a value is positive. It tells you the graph opens up. Okay? So don't say that's positive and that's negative. Like, are they having a negative day? Are they having a positive day? Use the language of opens or concavity. I also give you 3 points maybe if you didn't describe or it wasn't very clear. Question number 3, fill in each blank with one letter. It doesn't matter which order you wrote them in. Vertex is in the form of y equals, make sure you have this on your formula sheet, x minus h squared plus k. Notice it has one set of parentheses to the power of 2, and that would be choices C and G. Intercept or factor form, y equals a times x minus p, x minus q, or sometimes they write it as x minus r1, x minus r2. And essentially it's the same thing as you have two sets of parentheses, so that would be choice B and M. It's okay if you have a value on the outside, that's just your A value. So M and B or M and B. M and B or B and M. Standard form has no parentheses. That would be choices A and H. For third period, I think your question was when did the school open up? The answer is 1961. Don't feel bad for you because every other Friday I wear a shirt that says once a rebel, always a rebel, and it says 1961 on there. Christine, put your head up. Christine, put your head up. I'll go over your other question later. Backside. So I think that side was out of 16. Your test was out of 40, not 28. Backside. Spent a whole day going over this chart. This kind of told me if you were paying attention for the last 4 weeks of school. Lonzo, put your head up. Angel, go outside. This tells me if you got it right, or if you're just paying attention, I equals the square root of -1. Make sure you have that in your formula sheet. I squared is I times I, so if you have I is the square root of -1, I is the square root of -1, they're in the same radical. You have a pair here, this pair can come out, I squared is equal to -1. I cubed is equal to I squared times I squared is equal to -1 from the previous problem. -1 times I is -I. Some of you guys need to make your I's and your 1's clear. If it's ambiguous to me, I grade it based on what I saw. If you have issues with that, then just make it more clear next time. I to the fourth is I squared times I squared. I squared is -1, I squared is -1, -1 times -1 is a +1. Each of these were worth 1 point each. A lot of you guys don't box your answers, so then on the front side you lost a point for not boxing your answers. Question number 6 asks you for I to the 12th power. I to the 12th power is I to the 4th to the 3rd power. That essentially means I to the 4th times I to the 4th times I to the 4th. Because this representation basically means I to the 4 plus 4 plus 4, which is 12. Well, the reason why I use I to the 4th is because it's the easiest one. It's equal to 1. So 1 to the 3rd power is 1 times 1 times 1. Your answer is 1, which is C. Question number 7. Ask you to simplify x plus 3i minus 2 minus 3i. So automatically I knew if you drew the box or you did FOIL, it was wrong. The math operation here is subtraction. What do you do with subtraction? Think of it as like a -1, and you need to multiply to every term on the right side in the parentheses. So -1 times 2 is -2, and -1 times -3i is a +3i. You combine like terms. These are constants. 5 minus 2 is a 3, and 3i plus 3i is 6i. You got 2 points if you distributed. If you wrote a 3 in there that I knew you combine like terms, I give you a 3. Common mistake is to multiply. That's what CM stands here. I saw some student just write this, 3 plus 6i, and I gave you a 0 because you need to show your work. So you have time. It's not like you don't have time. A lot of this is just laziness. So if you're going to be lazy on a test, it's kind of like taking the DMV test. You want to be lazy. You wouldn't be marked off points for not being very clear to the person who's grading you. Number 8. I chose to use the same exact numbers, but the only difference is this one has a minus and this one has no math operation. Let's make that very clear. Let me take the highlighter. There is no math symbol. I think I warned you guys about that. So here I have 5 plus 3i times 2 minus 3i. So if you use FOIL, that's fine. I use the box. 5 plus 3i, 2 minus 3i. You'll multiply first. 5 times 2 is 10. 3i times 2 is 6i. 5 times negative 3i is negative 15i. And negative 3i times positive 3i is negative 9i squared. These 4 terms in the box I have here. Remember, I squared is equal to negative 1, so that's negative 1 times a negative 9, which is positive 9. 10 plus 9 is 19. Your answer is 19 minus 9i. If you did the box and maybe you made a mistake here, I saw a common mistake was just write negative 9i, then I only gave you 2 points for having the content. If everything inside the box is correct, but your final answer is wrong, I gave you guys 3 points. All right, question number 1 on the multiple choice. Begin by graphing the standard quadratic function f of x equals x squared. So if I draw that, if I draw my own tick marks, you guys had graphs on there? So try and draw in a light color. Remember that's 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 4. X is 1, you square it, you get 1. Square your x value, 2, you get 4. So my graph can kind of look like, that's the parent function. This one says, what's the graph of h of x? A couple of ways you can do this problem. One way you can do this problem is just put it into vertex form. Vertex form is ax minus h squared plus k. Then I would transform the plus 3 to a negative. And then from there, I would get, Diana, go outside. H value is negative 3, and my k value is 6. So if I have negative 3, 6, 1, 2, 3, and then this is up 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So my graph's going to look something like this. Another way you could have seen the problem is that my phrase, add to x, go west, add to y, go high. So it's talking about the transformation. So this basically means add to x, you're going left. So this means left 3. And because that's adding to x, go west or left. And then h of x is a fancy way of saying y. So you're adding to y, so go high. So you're going up 6. So left 3, up 6. Question number 2. Determine the equation of the axis or line of symmetry for the parabola that passes through these points, negative 4, 0, and 6, 0. So I'm just going to graph it. Should I use graph paper? Three, 4, 5, 6. So let's go ahead and graph these. 6, 0. Negative 4, 0. And if you think about what parabolas do, they're just, they're symmetrical. So what's the midpoint between 4 and 6? So if you add those together, you'll get 10, and half of 10 is what? 5. So if I count 5 from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That means my axis of symmetry looks something like this. cuts my parabola in half, and then when you graph it, your parabola can look something like this. Or it can be graphed down as well. So the big idea is that your answer here is your axis of symmetry. X is equal to 1 is your answer. So again, in factored form of quadratics, it's symmetrical. It just folds in half. Question number 3. Identify the vertex of the graph. Tell whether it is a minimum or a maximum. The vertex of the graph is either the minimum or the maximum. It's basically where it changes from decreasing to increasing. So that would be this point here. Class, is that the lowest or the highest point? That's called a minimum, and that order pair is 0, 0. So your answer is minimum at 0, 0. Question number 4. Asks you to simplify the square root of negative 16. Class, what are the factors of negative 16? Negative 1 and 4 and 4. Class, the square root, so you can think of this as square root of negative 1, square root of 4, square root of 4. Class, the square root of negative 1 is I. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 4 is 2. So multiply those together and you get an answer of 4i. And question number 5. Using the quadratic formula, determine the solutions to the following equation. They gave us x squared minus 10x plus 29 equals 0. I have ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So a is 1, b is negative 10, c is 29. Class, tell me the quadratic formula.
Negative b
X equals
negative b plus or minus radical b squared minus 4 and bc. What do I do?
So I'm just going to do the substitutions. Every a value will be 1. Every b value will be negative 10. And every c value will be 29. So I have x equals negative, substitution with the parentheses, negative 10 plus or minus radical negative 10 squared minus 4 times, my a value is 1, c value is 29, all over 2 times 1. Here I have the opposite of negative 10, which is positive 10. Negative 10 squared is negative 10 times negative 10, which is 100. Negative 4 times 1 times 29 is 116. 4 times 29. So this will be negative 116. All over 2. I have x equals 10 plus or minus 100 minus 116 is negative 16 over 2. We just did that in the last problem, so x equals 10 plus or minus, this will become 4i over 2. And now you can factor this. X equals 2 times 5 plus or minus 2i over 2 times 1. Sorry, we should make that one the positive. And this one will be the negative. 5 minus 2i over 2 times 1. So essentially what's happening there is your 2's will cancel. And then you're just left with 5 plus 2i. And 5 minus 2i is your answer. X is equal to these two values. And that was a multiple choice for your chapter 4 test.